Hello, YouTubers. I want to welcome you to another edition of Bargain Bin Gear. And, well, rather than focusing on gear, unfortunately, organization has caught up with me. And in last episode, I think I'd done a track which I was very pleased with for volume 414. So my 414th album. Okay. And, well, my first album, which was Modern Rock Guitar Volume 1, Abducted by Aliens. Right? Which was a kind of a conventional album. That was done in 1997, but was released in 1999. So, since 1999 up to the present, today, right, I had done 414 albums. Now, over time, I've gone through different computers and things, so trying to keep the albums organized, right, because I do want to keep them if I can, which is not always easy, believe me, especially when a computer dies or you switch to a different computer and you've got albums on that computer, those kinds of things. So in any case, volume 414 hadn't been released yet, and still hasn't been released yet, but I'm planning on it. Now, eventually at some point, when I got quite a few albums, right, and these hard drives would keep dying and the computers would change and things, I said, enough. So I got these things. See that? And it has a USB connection on the end here. And this is actually a solid state 2 terabyte drive, I think. And I've got 2 of these. Okay. And in these 2 portable drives, right, I have a folder called Albums, right? And basically it goes one by one, just album 1, album 2, album 3, album 4, album 5, all the way up until album 414. Now, that was basically my master albums, if you like, right? And it was really great to have all those albums there. And what each folder should contain is the tracks, right, hopefully in order, and the album artwork, if you like, or at least the front cover. Now, there's a great way of keeping tabs on the albums, right? But beyond that, remember I had released these albums, right? So they should show up on Amazon, Spotify, and so on, right? Though I couldn't be sure of that because, well, I didn't I didn't subscribe to either of these, Spotify or Apple Music or Amazon Music. So I thought, well, I'll go ahead and sign up for one. And so I signed up for Amazon. And sure enough, I looked it up. I can see it here on the screen, computer screen. You have to bear with me. So I got the Amazon Music, and I looked up guitarist Denis Taaffe. And sure enough, the albums were there. However, it showed only my latest release of the album, which is 412, volume 412, right? And it's called Pantheon, I think. So, I clicked on it, and sure enough, so basically it had all the tracks of the album, and suddenly it came back to me. I remember recording these. This track in particular, in fact, I can tell you something about that track and where it came from, or at least the inspiration of it. And that was a long time ago. I had an Xbox, the original old Microsoft Xbox, and I had a game on it, and it was a army kind of a game. I forget the name of it, but anyway, it inspired this track because it was a World War II kind of game, as I recall. So think World War II game. So I had the theme there. And let's see what the next track is. So I was very pleased to find that album, because I hadn't heard it in a long time. But what I did do is I went to the master drives here, these things, to see if 412 was there and was complete. And sure enough, it was here. And it's got the JPEG front cover. And as I looked at the tracks, they were all numbered, so they should be the same. However, from signing up for the Amazon Music, it had the title of each track. And I see here that I have the old, they're in the right order, but instead of being named for a track, it has the old file name. And a lot of times, for whatever reason, my keyboard wouldn't work or something like that. So I would get these weird sound titles of each track. For example, number 1 here is SND04 OUND049 dot wave, right? But that was actually the first track, and which actually is called Regimen, right? As in an army regimen. Okay. And it had the cover in the folder, the backup folder, which is great. Okay, and then, so I went back one to 411, volume 411, which is also on Amazon Music, right? And it's called The Darkness, right? Which is here. The next one's called Shadows. So, of course, I went back to the master drive, right, the portable master drives, and, well, to make sure that that I had the album as well, right. And sure enough, there's 411. And on 411, I'm glad, because not only does it have all the tracks, right, but they're named. In other words, no weird names, just number 1, The Darkness, number 2, Shadows, number 3, Found, and so on and so on. However, one thing I notice here on this one is I don't have the album cover, right? Okay. So even though it's been released, volume 411, right, and I have all the tracks, I have to track down the album cover. And I have it somewhere, but where, I'm not quite sure. And, well, this is kind of part of the organization. Ideally, I would have had the album cover, saved along with the tracks, but I don't. However, I know that, usually I go through CD Baby. So I know that if I log into CD Baby, I can find volume 411 and download the original artwork for that album. And it would also be found on the hard drive on one of these PCs. I have some in here in Studio A or in my living room studio. There's a bunch of computers there as well. So depending on when it was made, I can find the album cover and put it in the folder, volume 411, along with the tracks, right? Makes sense. And see, I didn't know I didn't have the album cover until just now. So that's something I'll have to do, probably after this video, really. That's what I should do anyway. Okay. And so I went back one more, just to be sure, though this goes on for quite a while. Because it actually has, most of my albums are on this Amazon Music. So here's volume 410, which is Ice Discovery. Alright, volume 410. There's that guitar with kind of a phaser. And for what I remember, it's this is the line 6HX of X to get that sound, I think. So this first one was called let's make sure. It's like buried in something. In ice. Buried in the ice, I think. Then the next one's Artifacts. And Expedition. Yeah, I like this track. So volume 410. So I check it against the master file on the portable drives, on these drives. Okay, and I look back on the master file on the portable drive, and it's there, volume 410. It has all the tracks and they're numbered. However, they don't have the title of the track, right? Instead it has the old file name. Like the first one is Hang Out. I don't know what that is from. Number 2 is Mach, M-A-C-H. Number 3 is Sound 005, Sound 033. Right? And so on. In other words, what I have to do is go in and rename all 11 tracks to the correct album name as it was released. And okay, I see the album cover is there. Okay, so that's just the 3 past albums, right? I mean, we could do this really. Ideally, you'd do it for all 412 albums, I guess. Right, and go through each one, make sure that they're all correct and that they're present. Because I know that there's a couple where, it lists the album folders and one would be missing. It just means it's not in the master file, right, on the portable drive, though it has been released. So it could even be on the Amazon Music and so on. And the reason I did this is because, right, I would like to, I don't know how I got astray there, but I have quite a few albums that haven't been released or anything. And remember I told you that that in the previous videos, right, that I had created album 414. Okay, and the reason why it's 414 is because I knew that I had an album, right, which would have been 413, right, that I hadn't released yet. Though I was in the process of releasing it. In other words, I had an album cover done, right, and so on. But now I had the album title. So this is 413. What's funny is on that track, I know that was recorded in the living room studio, and the reason why is because on these Mackie monitors, I hear in the background, I hear a television is on. Alright. It's kind of faint, but if you listen closely, you can hear it. that's volume 413, right, which is the next one to be released. However, I have all the tracks there, not necessarily in the order that they'll be on the released album, which I have to choose here, right? However, once that's done, then I can release volume 414, right? As you'll recall, 414 is one that I haven't released yet. Okay, so volume 414 is completed. Okay. Alright, so in any case, that's going to be volume 414. It still needs a cover. Right? I need to make a cover for it. And then go through the rigmarole of submitting it and uploading the tracks and so on and so on. So anyway, that's where I'm at, and it's been basically trying to organize these things, make sure that I have backups of all the albums and so on and so on. Because remember, all these tracks are improvised on the spot, except for the very first album. So I definitely want to, hold on to the tracks because I can't really recreate them because they were improvised on the spot. So in any case, there we go. And while I'm doing that, organizing the albums and releasing 413 and 414, I'm going to keep recording and do 415, and so on and so on. Okay, so I wanted to share that with you. And I'm actually quite pleased that at least the Amazon Music does have the albums, 412, 411, 410, 409, so on and so on. Pretty nice. I guess I should check to see that they're all there, but haven't done that yet. We'll see. Alright, very good. I'll see you next time. Okay.